It is my privilege to introduce our speaker for today, Dr. Christopher James. Chris is Assistant Professor of Evangelism and Missional Christianity and teaches both seminary and undergraduate classes. He's a graduate of Wheaton College, Fuller Theological Seminary, and Boston University. In addition to publishing a number of scholarly articles, Dr. James has had his research featured in print, radio, and television, with stories in the Seattle Met magazine, on NBC, and on National Public Radio. Chris invites his students to grapple with what it means to take Jesus' command to love our neighbor both seriously and literally. He practiced what he preaches, serving on the Dubuque Community Police Relations Committee and advising as advisor to a new Mandarin-speaking church being started here in Dubuque. He is also co-founder of New World Brewing, a monthly community event held in a brewing pub downtown where conversation and other things are, beer particularly, are in abundance. Chris and his spouse, Lindsay, have two children, Jenny and Luke. They're very active in our community, in our university, and it is a privilege to have them as members of our Dubuque community, and it is a privilege to hear from Chris today. Will you welcome Dr. James with me?
Thank you, President Bullock. Members of the board, faculty colleagues, graduates, families, friends, distinguished guests, thank you for giving me the opportunity to be part of this joyful occasion. Graduating class of 2017, well done. That's right. The question is about to change. For the last 4 years, you've been hearing one question over and over again. You've been asked by your professors, you've been asked by your roommates, your classmates, your teammates, and your first dates, what is your major? Whether your answer was criminal justice, anybody here? Or business? Or sociology? All four of you, way to go. Despite your enthusiasm, I know you're tired of this question. So congratulations, today you get to put that question to bed. Today you're graduating into a new question. It's a question that your parents have lived with for decades. It's the question you're going to be asked by virtually every new person you meet for the rest of your career. What do you do? Of course, what do you do basically means what's your job? And we've been preparing you to get a job. Lord knows your parents want you to get a job. Can I get an amen? And yet there's a danger with this new question. People are going to ask you, what do you do, as a way of sizing you up, as a way of figuring out how you rank, how much money you make, how important you are, how much influence you have. If you're a CEO, they'll be impressed. If you're a janitor, not so much. This new question, what do you do, is really a veiled way of asking, what's your status? But the deeper danger is that you'll get so used to hearing this question that the underlying status question will get lodged in your psyche, causing you to think that the status of the job that you have is correlated to your value as a person. That's a problem. Right out of graduate school, I was unemployed. My wife, Lindsay, had landed a great job at a church in Silicon Valley. She was working on campus at Stanford University, and being unemployed was harder for me than I expected. I had enjoyed my status as a top student, and now most of the people I met just knew me as Lindsay's husband. I think I'm in for some more of this. My wife has announced a candidacy for the Iowa House of Representatives, but I'm going to be okay with being Lindsay's husband in that case. But back then, my insecurity got kind of ugly. I became a braggart. I had no job, so what could I brag about? I bragged that I had a master's degree. I bragged about my GPA as if somebody cared. More strangely, I had this powerful urge to get a business card, as if a little piece of cardstock would justify my existence. This is what happens when you're playing the status game and you're losing. Feelings of inadequacy that lead to ridiculous attempts to prop up your status, and if you don't get out of it, eventually you head for despair. Even when you think you're winning the status game, it can be clear to others that you're in a self-destructive illusion. Winning! The bottom line is this: the status game is rigged. It's like one of those carnival games with the bottles you can never knock over. If you chase after wealth, you will impoverish your soul. If you aspire for great influence, you will forfeit authentic relationship, and then you'll die. Was this supposed to be uplifting? I'm sorry. You'll die, and the people at your funeral will rave about how you were such a hard worker and how you turned your company around and how many Twitter followers you had. They'll rave about your status, but they won't talk about you because they won't really know you. No. This does not have to be your story. Even though you're graduating into this new question, you do not have to play the status game. My high school history teacher was named Mr. Hagen, and Mr. Hagen wore a faux leather black fanny pack on his left front hip, which I assure you was out of style even in the 1990s. Mr. Hagen was one of those distractible teachers who would get off on a tangent and talk about something completely unrelated to the class for the whole period. We don't have any faculty here, I'm glad to say, like that. But one random tangent included this drop of wisdom. He said, "The questions you ask will determine the journey you'll take." Graduates, the questions you ask will determine the journey you're about to take. The questions that get lodged in your psyche will determine the trajectory of your life. They'll drive every decision you make, even if you don't know what questions they are. Do you know what questions are buried in your psyche? Am I cool enough? Am I powerful enough? Am I sexy enough? Am I enough? I know these are the questions for many of you because they're the questions being answered every time you blast Meghan Trainor's reassurance that every inch of you is perfect from the bottom to the top. These are the questions you're answering every time you echo Kendrick Lamar's boast, "Dripping gold inside my DNA, power shows inside my DNA." Many of you are roaring with Katy Perry about how you're a champion because you're trying to convince yourselves you're enough. Are you enough? Actually, you are enough. You are beautiful, I can see it. You're valuable. You're capable of amazing things. More importantly, you are loved. Not because I said so, certainly not because Meghan Trainor said so, but because God has said so in Jesus Christ. I have good news for you. Your status is settled, so you can stop worrying about your status. Today, it's time to start working out your purpose. And here's where you start. You opt out of the status game by choosing a deeper question. It's one of our great aspirations as the University of Dubuque that in your time with us, we would give you a deep, life-giving question deep in your soul. Today's our last chance to do this, and I'm here to make one final attempt. So graduates, here it is, a deep question for your life journey. How am I called to help the world thrive? If you've noticed, or if you haven't, it's a mess out there. In many ways and in many places, the world is not thriving. In Syria and North Korea, Venezuela, Chechnya, even here in the U.S., we're polarized, we're distracted, addicted, overweight, we're lonely, we're beset by fear and outrage on virtually all sides of every issue. Our world is not thriving. It's a mess. Sorry about that. And now this mess is yours. According to Christianity and Judaism and Islam, humans were created to be caretakers of the world, to help all living things thrive. Like God, we're called to make order and beauty out of chaos. We're called to repair what's broken, tikkun olam, to take what we're given and multiply it in ways that make the whole planet flourish. Helping our world thrive is what you were created for. Helping our world thrive is what you are called to do with your life. The only question is how. How are you called to help our world thrive? I can't answer this for you exactly, but I'll give you a big hint. It has something to do with what you're about to invest 40 hours of every week into. I'll tell you a story. There were 3 bricklayers on the same job site. Each one of them was asked what they were doing. The first responded gruffly, "I'm laying bricks." The second replied, "I'm building a wall." But the third bricklayer responded with pride, "I'm building a cathedral." What kind of bricklayer are you going to be? Do you know how your job is part of building a cathedral? We lived in Boston while I worked on my PhD, and in Boston they have tolls, and at some of these tolls they have live tellers. Most of these tellers won't look you in the eye, won't say a word to you. They look generally about as miserable as you would expect them to. But one day I happened to pass through the same toll booth with the same teller twice in the same day. And I only remember this because when I pulled up to the toll booth, the middle-aged African-American woman greeted me with a smile. She made eye contact with me, and after she'd made my change, she gave me a heartfelt, "God bless you." As I drove away, I didn't really think much about that, but when I happened to come back through that same toll 3 hours later, it was the exact same experience. A warm smile, eye contact, and a heartfelt, "God bless you." And as I was driving away from that toll booth for the second time, I was overwhelmed with the realization that this woman was literally blessing people all day, every day. She was blessing people like it was her job. This was a woman who knew that she was called to help the world thrive. I'm willing to bet if you were to ask her, "What do you do?" she wouldn't tell you, "I'm a toll collector." She would tell you that I surprise thousands of people every day with an unexpected smile and a genuine blessing as I receive their tolls on the Mass Pike. So graduates, while the degrees you're about to receive today may elevate your status, may today also be the day you decide to elevate your purpose. And that starts with asking yourself, how am I called to help the world thrive? I want to close with a dare. When you get asked, "What do you do?" which you're going to be asked incessantly, I dare you to subvert the status game. I dare you not to report your occupation, but instead to tell them how you make the world thrive. Teachers, tell them you equip children to be productive members of society. Nurses, tell them you bring healing and hope to the sick and injured. Engineers, accountants, managers, pilots, officers, whatever your job is, tell them how you're building a cathedral. I guarantee you that if you answer their question in this way, you'll have a lifetime of interesting conversations. But more importantly, I promise you that if you live from this deep question, you will change the world, starting with yourselves. Thank you.